Welcome, Makenzie, to the Tribe of Runners podcast. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your crazy busy schedule to be on the podcast. And actually, we have a topic to talk about, which I'm super excited to talk about. But before we get to it, again, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
I'm seriously so excited to be on the podcast. I have low-key had a dream that maybe when I finished my first 100-miler, I'd be invited. And I jumped the gun. So I'm really excited to be here, even pre-100-miler.
Yes. Well, and for anyone that is listening, your first 100-miler is going to be Mogollon. And I am 100% having you on post 100-miler only because it's going to be an epic race. I knew you're going to do amazing. And I need to hear all the details afterwards. So you will be a return guest for sure.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm excited. That's going to be in September. So we still have a couple months and I need them to train, but looking forward to it.
Yes. And you will tackle it for sure. But before we get to the actual topic, I'm not gonna say what it is just yet. But tell us a little bit about yourself outside of running. I know that's very hard to do, but I also know you have a lot going on in your personal life. So tell us all about it.
Yeah, thank you for asking. So first and foremost, I feel like so I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and my faith in Christ and knowing that I'm a child of God, I feel like that's helped shape my entire life. So that's kind of like the biggest thing. Beyond that, and within that, I have an amazing family. I have wonderful parents and 3 brothers. And then I've been married for almost 12 years now, which is crazy.
Awesome.
Time goes by so fast. And we have 3 kids. They are 6, 4, and 2, and they are just so much fun. Like, they keep me moving all the time. My time on feet is way up there thanks to them. It's just awesome. And I feel like my kids, they're kind of the biggest part of my life right now, and they bring the highest highs. Like, they are my greatest joy and also the lowest lows. Like, they're my biggest source of worry and stress and concern and all of that, but they're all of it. Yeah.
Yeah. That's incredible. And you're definitely a busybody. I know only because I am actually your coach and I train you, and you are an amazing athlete. You hit all of your runs no matter what in the mix of all this craziness. But I have actually heard and talked to some of your children in some coaching calls. So they're amazing. They're super, super cute. And, you always put your family first, which is awesome, but you still manage to get in, typically getting up early to go run. So appreciate all of that. And that's amazing.
Thank you. Thanks for the props. It's fun. I feel like running is the thing that makes everything in my life feel more, how do I say it, organized or stable. I don't know, I get up and I get my run done and I'm like, man, I crushed this day already. Kind of whoever, whatever happens after this, who cares? Because I got my run in. And so it gives me structure and it makes me feel good first thing in the morning. So I like to get it done early if I can.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm sure with having the 3 kids, and just not to say their chaos, but the chaos of having children leads to be some days where you think you can get a workout in at, say, 5:00 at night, and then that doesn't happen. And then your day's, not to say ruined, but a little on the uneasy
mentally,
side.
Yeah. I just unwind.
Yes. So yeah, no,
right.
completely
I've
understand.
learned that lesson. Don't put it off. I try and get things done early. And the nature of my husband's job too is so he's in surgeries with the doctors, and those are changing or getting pushed or whatever. And so if he tells me he's going to be home at 4, that may or may not happen. Usually it's a couple hours after he says. So I'm like, if I get it done before he leaves to work, then it's done, and I don't have to worry about whether or not the surgeries get pushed or something gets added on or whatever. So.
Yeah, you don't have that stress. You just know no matter what, you wake up, get your running, and then you're done. You're set for the day. I love it.
Yep. Oh, I did take the boys. I just didn't feel like waking up early. I'd woken up early for a couple days in a row. And so I just put one in the stroller, one on his bike, and we went out and hit the trails. And my times were obviously way worse than they usually are. But that is another option too. Sometimes I just take them with me, and that's fun too.
Oh yeah. And I remember one time you asked me, is this okay? And I'm like, of course it's okay. Because, not everyone has to be 100% to the T correctly done, every once in a while throwing in, and even if it's a little slower than usual, that's okay. You know what I mean? And you get to spend some good time with your kids, which I'm sure they always appreciate.
Yeah, definitely.
For sure. Awesome. So thank you so much for sharing with us a little bit about you. So now let's talk about running. How and when did you get into running?
Yeah. Okay. So when I was in high school, I started running just because I wanted to be more fit. You know, it was more about, can I lose a little weight and just staying active. I had I'd been cut from both the basketball and the volleyball team, so feeling a little hurt. Like, I guess I'm not athletic enough, you know. But running was something, you know, no one could cut me from the running team. I could just go out and do that myself. And so I started running in high school, and I just kind of realized that I was having fun setting goals. I think I had run a couple 5Ks, and then I'm like, oh, I wonder if I could do a 10K. And so you set that goal and accomplish it. And then what if I could do a half marathon? And so I did that. And I just kind of got addicted to that feeling of, I wonder if I could, and then being able to do it. And the training too, I enjoy that. And, so in I think it was 2015, I was like, I wonder if I could do a marathon. Like, that felt so far out of my reach, but I was like, I'm going to try. And I had no idea what I was doing. I like totally had bad IT band pain, like just kept pushing through no matter what. Like, I think I ate like one grape the entire race, maybe, and a few sips of water. Like, I had no idea how to fuel, like anything. So, but I did finish the marathon. I did the Petrified Forest Marathon, which is here in Arizona. The Petrified Forest is a national park, and it's cool, and a lot of people love it. But it's very like just kind of rolling hills, like all the same. It's a little boring, but you know, I got it done. So I did that, and then we started having kids, and so I kind of took a break. Like, I was always kind of still had my foot in the door. Like, between having Jack and Maisie 1 and 2, I ran half marathon, and then between Maisie and Luke, I did a adventure race, which was super fun. We biked and ran and kayaked for that, and so I was kind of always doing little things, but I wasn't fully in. And then after having Luke, my third, I just really wanted to get back into that. And so my husband and I and my brother Carter, who has actually previously been on your podcast, we decided to go and hike the Grand Canyon. And that, which I'd done that again pre-kids, but I was like, gosh, it just felt so major. And so I trained really hard, and we went and hiked it. And while we were doing that, we were like, what if we ran some of the downhill? Like, we had planned to, but we went ahead and did it. And we finished 4 hours faster than we thought we would, just by, like, you know, adding in that little bit of running. And I think we also hiked faster than we expected to. And I don't know, that just kind of lit the fire again. I was like, man, I miss this. And it also got me into the trail running world, which I love. I love it so much. So, yeah, we did that. And then we did R3. So that's where you go rim to rim in the Grand Canyon and then back the other way. And, again, that was just kind of like, oh, I don't know if I can do that. Like, it scared me really bad, but I wanted to give it a try, and we were able to do it. And then after that, Carter and I signed up for an ultra marathon, a 50K, and we did that last September. And like I said, I'm just hooked on the trail running world. I'm loving it and excited to do more and push those distances.
Yes, yes, I love it. And, you know, we came in contact right before your 50K, and you absolutely crushed it. And then we have a 50 miler coming up, and then your 100 miler. So truly, you are like an amazing athlete. You crush all of your runs. You ask all of the right questions, and I've loved watching you blossom into the trail running and becoming so obsessed, because that's like what we do in this world, you know, become obsessed with running. And I truly cannot wait for you to crush not only 50 miler, because I don't want to get it too head, but also the 100 miler. And you are not tackling easy races. So Zane Gray is going to be your 50 miler, which is an insane 50 miler to go off of. And then to top that, you want to do Mogollon, which is amazing. I'm super, super excited. But what makes you want to do these, not to say harder, but like harder races compared to like your normal type of trail running?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I wanted to highlight too. So you mentioned so I got you as my coach right before the 50K, and investing in myself in that way felt really scary. Like I was like, oh, I'm gonna spend this money and like this time and like I don't know, am I good enough? Like that question kept coming up.
Mm.
But I just wanted to say, if there's anyone listening that's kind of like on the fence about it, it has completely changed the game for me. Liz specifically is an amazing coach. Like I'm so grateful to have you. You've been the perfect blend of like understanding that there's so much going on in life and that I'm busy and I've got things going on, but also like that pushing and like, but yeah, we're gonna get crap done, right? We're gonna move forward. We're gonna crush these goals. So, and like I mentioned, when I did my first marathon, I had no idea how to fuel or anything, and I just did my second marathon 2 weeks ago, and I PR'd by 59 minutes. So almost an hour. Like just the results were night and day. Like seriously. And then to answer your question, like what makes me want to tackle those races? I mean, in part because I feel like I have the confidence like I can because I have a coach who is guiding me through like, okay, these are the sections and this is the vert and this is what we need to make sure we're working on. But the Zane Grey and the Mogollon are also about an hour and a half away from where I live. And even though I grew up in Arizona, I didn't really explore, like I did little hikes here and there, but I wasn't as into this world yet. And so I feel like there's a ton to explore right in my backyard. And I plan to, if I can, like run each section of the Mogollon Monster before, so that race day is like putting the puzzle together. And so the fact that it's that close intrigued me. And also the fact that it scares me to death.
Yes.
For some reason, that's why I want to go after it. So
No, that's awesome. And first, I have to say thank you so much for all the kind words, but you are always the one doing the work, and I hope you know that. So I may help you in some aspects, but you are grinding out there every day, and truly am super proud to have you as be there for you, have you as an athlete, and to push you every single day. But one big thing I love that you said is like it scares you, and I think people don't realize like going after the things that scare you just yes, it is terrifying, but at the same time, it's like, ooh, but can I do it? I'm gonna do it. Like, how am I gonna do it? You know, and that's something I've learned about you and getting to know you is like you love that about this trail running because it's all terrifying if you really think about it. No matter the distance, time on feet, any of that stuff, but you always tackle it. You ask all the right questions to prepare yourself for it. So I'm super excited to see you get through it, and I'm glad that you're doing the things that are scaring you.
Thank you. Yeah, this is, I mean, it's just even more motivation. I got to get that finish, man, because it's we've talked about it now. It's out there. I got to get that finish so I can come back and tell you about it.
Yes, the world knows now. The pressure's on.
Yes.
Very cool. But also outside of running, you have a very interesting professional, not to say it's like in a bad way, but interesting professional life that can be correlated towards running, which we're going to get into like in a second. But tell us about what you do for work, and let's get into that.
Yes, awesome. So right now, like we talked about, I got my kids, and for the most part, I'm a stay-at-home mom. But I get to work 2 days a month right now doing pelvic floor therapy. So what I went to school for, I got my doctorate in occupational therapy, so like a rehab specialist. And I did my residency project when I was in my schooling on using yoga as a therapeutic medium, and specifically using that for trauma-informed care. And so I was in this group of therapists shortly after I had graduated, where we would meet once a month and talk about using yoga as a therapeutic medium. And someone came to that group and presented on pelvic floor therapy. And I was like, never heard of this. Like I had gone through all my schooling and said, still never heard of it. But they came and talked about what it was. And it was just kind of a light bulb moment for me. I was like, that is what I want to do. In my residency, I was also specifically kind of researching and looking at women who had been through traumatic experiences. And in my work as a pelvic floor therapist, I specialize in women's health as well.
Very cool. So many questions. So, and we will talk about actually something specific towards running and just a few. But like one of the things, I know we had kind of previously talked about this before, and I had no clue about this, but men can also deal with this. So go kind of in depth, like maybe start with explaining what exactly this is, like the therapy that, the rehab and all of that, and kind of get into that. And then shed light not only to the women, but also the
Mhm.
men, about it.
Absolutely. For sure. So the pelvic floor is a part of our body. So we have our pelvis. Obviously, most of us are probably more familiar with that. The pelvic bones. But within the pelvic bones, there are actually 14 muscles that make up our pelvic floor. Um, who knew? There's all that
Yeah.
going on down there, right? Um, and our pelvic floor is super important. It obviously, it's our bowel and bladder function, sexual function. It's a spinal stabilizer, and it helps us transmit loads from upper body to lower body. Which obviously, when we're running, lots of load bearing happening, right?
Yes.
So, and yeah, as I mentioned pre-recording to Liz, like men and women both have pelvic floors. Women, because we have babies and just because of the way that we're made, are more likely to have pelvic floor dysfunction. But that's not to say that men can't as well. So if you're a man and you're listening to this, and you are dealing with some of the things that I described, know that you're not alone, and there is help out there for you. And there are pelvic floor specialists who specialize in men's pelvic health as well. But for women, the stuff that I see most often, I'm dealing with women who have incontinence, and that can be urinary or fecal incontinence, which obviously can affect your life hugely. Like it can decrease your quality of life in many ways. And then
Wow.
pelvic organ prolapse is the other thing that I see often, pelvic pain. And then I'm also dealing with a lot of like low back, hip pain, trying to help people work through what's going on there.
Very cool, very cool. And I know you had mentioned like you never really heard about this, then you heard about this, and it's we all know like you said, we all know we have a pelvic. I knew it was
Yeah,
muscular, but never 14 muscles down. So
I know.
that just blew my mind. That's very impressive.
Crazy.
And you had mentioned it. It's super big in runners as well. Like we do so much with core and in that general area. I mean, and as you
Yes.
know, and I'm sure this is something like you deal with a lot. Like for women, when we get older, like that muscle
Mm-hmm.
tends to decline. And
Yep.
like I'll never forget the first time I went out and was like jumping on a trampoline, and I was like, oh my gosh, I think I just peed a little. And
Why
it's
did I
not
just
like
hear
I'm not
this?
trying to be weird, but I mean, you grow up and I'm like, what the heck? I'd never done this before. This is so weird, but it definitely happens. And it's amazing that you do this. So
Yeah.
you came to me actually with
Mm-hmm.
a article that you had
Mm-hmm.
found and you've read, and it was returning to running after having a kid, after postpartum.
Yeah.
So what, like, when did you see this article? Like, what, like,
Mm-hmm.
how'd you find it? That's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. So a colleague of mine actually shared the article with me, someone that I went to school with, and she is also a pelvic floor therapist now. She lives in Ketchum, Idaho. But we just share resources, business wise and pelvic floor therapy wise. And she shared this with me, and I was like, this is gold, because one of my pet peeves is the lack of information around women's health. And then specifically after we have babies, it's like, okay, you have this baby, and let's back up a little bit and think about how much your body is changing as you're carrying a child. Like our belly is getting bigger, our center of gravity is changing, your back muscles get tighter, and like we'll dive into that even a little bit more. But massive changes. And then you give birth, and in one day that baby's gone. And your body's
Mm.
left going like, wait, what is going on? Like, and then you take that baby home and you're trying to figure out a myriad of things, sleep schedules, breastfeeding, all these things going on. And your doctor's like, I'll see you in 6 weeks.
Mm.
Okay, 6 weeks is pretty long. And then you go into that 6 week appointment and they do a basic checkup and tell you, okay, go ahead and resume normal activity. Again, what is normal now? Like your whole
Mhm.
life has been turned upside down, especially if it's your first child. Like you're trying to kind of figure out what in the world is going on, and what your life looks like now. And so, like, what even is normal? It's probably not going to be what your normal was before you had a baby, just because of what's going on in your life, let alone the changes that your body has been through. So, I think that we need a lot more guidance and a lot more help figuring out how to return, especially to high impact exercises such as running. So, when I saw this article, there were a couple therapists that got together and went through and analyzed any information that they could find about returning to running. And honestly, it's not a ton, but they did a great job finding as much as they could. And they brought that all together. And with that, gave us some objective measures to look
Mm.
for to see if women are ready to return to running. because that blanket statement, like at 6 weeks, go ahead and return to running or your normal activities. If someone was an avid runner before, that may not be safe for them to return to. And even if they don't experience these problems right then, I have a lot of women who come in years postpartum and they're dealing with a lot of issues that could have been resolved if they knew how to rehab better right after having the baby.
Yeah, and I can only imagine. Obviously, I've never had a child. My sister's had 4 kids, and I can only imagine. And she's an avid runner, and I remember like every time we'd talk about like, oh yeah, like I kind of got back to running after having a kid, but it's just way different. She had no
Totally.
clue, and I'm sure she's gonna hear this and be like, oh my gosh, I should have
Yeah.
done this way back when.
Yeah.
So with that being said, and I know like I will have this article in the show notes so people can go and click it and like
Perfect.
re-reference it, but more or less like what are like the key signs and or symptoms like after having a baby like that person that lady should look for and realize like, oh, maybe I shouldn't start running right away, you know what I mean? Like what are some of the
Totally.
signs and symptoms?
Totally. That is a great question. Do you mind if I back up a little bit and kind of explain? So I talked about the 14 muscles in the pelvic floor, but I give everyone the spiel when they come in for therapy and just explaining how our whole abdominal canister is working together. And then I think that will help it make a little more sense as we unfold, like when is it safe to
Yes.
run again after having a baby?
Yes, 100%,
So
go into details.
Okay, awesome, awesome. So when we talk about our core and our pelvic floor, there are actually 4 things that need to be working together like gears in a system to give us stability so that we can then have mobility. And that is our deep transverse abdominis. That's our deepest layer of core muscles, okay? So it's a big muscle. It wraps around from our back to the front and acts like a corset. Then there's our spinal stabilizers in the back, diaphragm on top, and pelvic floor on the bottom. So those 4 things, if one of them is out of whack, oftentimes the others are out of whack as well because they're so closely related. So when someone comes in for a pelvic floor evaluation, I am not only doing a pelvic exam and looking at their pelvic floor. We do that in pelvic floor therapy, obviously, but I'm also looking at what is their posture like? How are they breathing? Spoiler alert, probably your first exercise will be learning how to breathe correctly. Because if our diaphragm is stagnant, then so is our pelvic floor. So we can breathe correctly, then our diaphragm and our pelvic floor, our abdominals are getting a chance to lengthen and strengthen all day long. So when we carry a baby to full term, that deep layer of core muscles is completely stretched out. If you carry a baby to term, 100% of women are going to have diastasis recti. So if you've heard of that before, that abdominal separation, it just has to happen. It has to make room for the baby. So bringing that back together, for some women, it comes back together on its own. For some, they need therapy to help that come back together and some specific exercises, but just kind of keeping an eye on that. And then as far as knowing when it is safe to return to running, in this article, they say that you should wait at least 3 months, which again, that's off what the doctors are saying at 6 weeks, like resuming normal activity. So I thought that was very interesting and a good piece of information that we got from this article. That doesn't mean you shouldn't be doing anything for those 3 months though, right? Like I would absolutely lose my mind. Like 3 weeks after I have a baby, I'm like, I got to get out. I got to go do something. So there are plenty of exercises that are safe in that time, but not necessarily running yet. And we can talk about how to get to where running is safe. But one thing that I thought was really helpful in this article is that they have some information about assessing the load and impact. And like, if you can do these exercises, and I can read through them, but like you said, we will have this linked in the show notes. If you can do these things with no pain, no feelings of like heaviness or dragging in the vagina, and no incontinence, then you're in a good place to look at a graded return to running. And that was the other thing I loved from this. It's like, okay, say we get to this 3-month mark and we have hit all those objective markers that are listed in this article. Then we're looking at like a couch to 5K type situation. It's short run walks getting back into it and paying attention to how your body is feeling through that, rather than like going out for speed work that next day. Like
Mhm.
just not a good
Mhm.
idea.
Not recommended.
Exactly. Okay. So those load and impact management tools that we can use to assess. Can you walk for 30 minutes without feeling any of those symptoms? So no pain, no heaviness or dragging, and no incontinence. Can you do a single leg balance on each leg for 10 seconds? A single leg squat, 10 repetitions on each side. Jogging in place for 1 minute. Forward bounds for 10 repetitions. Hopping in place on one leg for 10 repetitions and then 10 on the other side. And then like a single leg running man move. You know what I'm talking
Mhm.
about? Like back and
Mhm.
forth.
Mhm.
10 repetitions on each side. So you can see through those exercises, we're really testing with the walking 30 minutes, we're testing that endurance piece. And then with a lot of these other ones, we're testing that impact piece. And how is the pelvic floor dealing with and responding to the increased impact?
Mm.
So I thought those were really helpful as a therapist and as a woman trying to figure out, like, is my body ready for this? If I can do these things, then I'm in a good place moving forward.
Mhm.
They also gave us some strength exercises as well that I thought were super helpful. And I use these not only as an assessment, but also as like part of my workout that I try and sneak in. And I love them because they are single leg exercises. And running is really a single leg thing. You're pushing off and landing on one leg at a time.
Mhm.
So those 4 exercises are single leg sit to stands. So sitting
Mm.
on a chair, like no rolly chairs, something safe,
Yeah.
and doing single leg sit to stand. So you're just standing up and slowly sitting back down on one leg and just hovering the other leg. Single leg calf raises, single leg bridges, and then single leg sideline abduction. So you're laying on your side, picture like an 80s workout video, and they're like lifting their leg
Yes.
up to the side. If you want to put
Yeah.
on a leotard and tights to really own it, go for it.
It's a must do. Must do.
Must do. Yeah. So anyway, I thought those were really, really great objective measures, and maybe we can make like even just post little pictures of those load assessments and the strength exercises for people so they can test that. And for the strength stuff, you want to be able to do 20 repetitions on each leg
Mm.
without stopping to know, like, okay, am I strong enough to handle the strength required for running?
Yeah, that's incredible. And so many of these things, like I wouldn't even think to, like try to test. And it's not
Yeah,
out of like ignorance or anything like that, but I wouldn't have any clue to know what to do
totally.
you know, postpartum. So amazing,
Totally.
amazing assessment. And like to say everything's clear, start the load or start going back into load. Obviously, that is
Mhm.
way different. Like you said, we're not going into full out sprints. It's slowly taking the time to come back into training and,
Yep.
assess accordingly. But let's just say things aren't going as planned. Like, what are some key
Mhm.
things for someone to be on the lookout of? Like, maybe you aren't ready yet. Like, what are some of the key, like,
Totally.
you know what I mean? Like, key things that are
Yes,
happening.
yeah, some key like markers like, oh, maybe my body's not ready for that. It's
Yeah.
a great question. So, one thing I would look specifically at your core. When you're trying to do your core exercises, do you see any like doming of the abdominal wall or any sinking? That could be an indication that there's still abdominal separation that needs to be addressed.
Mhm.
So that's a good thing to look at. And then if you are trying to exercise or running, or even just in your daily life, and you are feeling like a feeling of heaviness or dragging in the vaginal canal, that could be an indication that there's pelvic organ prolapse. And I mentioned that at the beginning, but I'll explain a little bit more what that is. So for women, we can have a prolapse or like a sinking down of either the bladder, the uterus, or the rectum.
Mhm.
And so, even if you have prolapse, it's important to go to either your urogynecologist or a pelvic floor therapist to kind of figure out what exactly is going on, what kind of prolapse is happening, and then you can be given exercises to treat that specifically.
Mhm.
So yeah, pelvic organ prolapse and then incontinence as well. If that's something you're dealing with, um, it would be advisable to get it taken care of and then go and return to running. I know a lot of women who have just been dealing with incontinence for a really long time. And what I always like to tell people is incontinence is common, but is not normal. So, and the difference there being, like, I grew up and I knew, like, my mom and my aunts, like, they would have to, like, cross their legs when they laughed or sneezed or whatever, and they're trying not to pee their pants. So I just figured when I grow up and I have babies, I will also pee my pants. And then becoming a pelvic floor therapist, I'm like, no, it doesn't have to be that way. So I like to tell people, like, there is, it's not just the way that it is. There are things that we can do to decrease incontinence, and even stop it from happening. So if you are dealing with that, it would be better to go ahead and try and deal with it now rather than just kind of ignoring it and letting it get worse through the years.
Yeah. And it's so true. And I'll tell you the same thing. Like, I always thought it was just a normal thing that happens as we got older, and it was just like a thing,
Totally.
But it is nice to hear there's ways around it and things. I did know, but you don't really know until you talk to someone. I hate to say it.
For sure. And with pelvic floor therapy and, like, my job, it is a taboo subject, right? Like, how often do you just sit down, you're like, so peed myself a little bit the other day, what about you? Like, you don't do that. Like,
it's very true.
It's just awkward. We don't know who to talk to about it. And a lot of doctors aren't even, so much more information is coming out about pelvic floor therapy now, but it's still a relatively new field. And so even if you tell your doctor, they might just tell you, sorry, like, I don't know, whatever. Or they'll tell you to do Kegels, which are pelvic floor contractions, which I've got no beef with Kegels. They have their place. But when that is the blanket statement given for everyone, that's what I have a problem with. And even specifically kind of going into the running world, I see a lot of women who are very fit and very active and still dealing with incontinence. And it could be actually because your pelvic floor muscles are too tight, not that they're too weak. So if someone's telling you, well, do Kegels, we could be making the problem worse, actually. And so anyway, just, it's very important, if you can, to get an assessment from a professional and figure out what is going on. Because, it's a part of our body, like we said, it's taboo, but it's also a part of our body we tend to just be like, I don't know what's going on, and I don't really want to know. You just kind of like shove it down. But if you can get an assessment from a professional and get an idea of really what is going on, and therefore, like, what is the treatment path that I need to take? Do I need to lengthen those muscles? Do I need to strengthen those muscles? Usually we need a combination of both, but people can help you figure out what that combination looks like.
Yeah. And it's so funny they say it is so something that is not talked about. Like, upon even like mother to daughter too, like, it's just something that we kind of have all, like, I for sure have like noticed, and I'm very close with my mom, and I'm sure we've had the talk and like randomly talked about it, but like kind of just like brush it off and laughed about it more or less. And it's really something that should be talked about. So we will push it to be talked about more often.
And I think a lot of people too, even if they're talking about it, like I said, we don't know what the solution is. So what else are you going to do? Like, but laugh. But I am trying to help get the information out there. There are other countries, like in France, women get 12 pelvic floor therapy visits as part of their postpartum package. Like, that's just a part of it. And I'm sorry, America, like, we are failing mothers in so many ways. And this is one of them. Like, that should be a part of postpartum care. But as it stands now, a lot of people don't even know that it is an option. And then there's other barriers, as far as, do they have insurance? Does their insurance cover it? I actually work in I just have my own company, and I do a cash pay clinic right now, which is great and it fits my life. But I have a hard time sometimes because I know that the fact that it's cash pay is a barrier for people sometimes. And if I had all the time in the world, I would do all the therapy for all the people. But right now I'm offering what I can.
No. And, we've already talked about this. Like, you have so much going on anyway, and this is an amazing thing to be involved in. And hopefully here in the US, it does kind of step up their game and more people get involved. And I love that this is running related. Like you said, there is a lot of non-existing information for women, to be 100% honest, especially when it comes to our lady parts or anything to do like menstrual cycle. That's another hot topic I would love to like dive more into. But it is hard, and it's finding the specifics and someone that actually knows what they're talking about. But I love that you brought this to my attention and we're talking about it. But getting back to this article, you had mentioned like the load. Do you want to go over when returning to running, like the
Mm-hmm.
load increase and like what is recommended after they have accomplished the strength training, or like, the steps to be
Yes.
okay, I think I can start running now. Let's talk about that load.
Yes, definitely. So in this article, there's an appendix, appendix number 2, and it gives an example of an exercise progression for the early postpartum period. Is that kind of what you're talking about? Like, how do we know what to do and when we're ready to start running?
Yes, 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 yes.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so after you have the baby, weeks 0 to 2, we can do pelvic floor muscle exercises. So like those Kegels, those contractions, targeting both strength and endurance. So when I'm teaching people how to do Kegels, I'm teaching them both what we call quick clicks. So that's going to be like you contract, relax, contract, relax. Then there's also endurance, where you're going to contract and hold for as long as you can. And in this article, I loved that they broke it down as well. They were saying in standing, to be able to be strong enough to go back to running, you want your pelvic floor. And this is important, right? Like I've heard a lot of people say, oh, do your Kegels at a stoplight. Well, you're never going to pee your pants at a stoplight, but do we live sitting down? We sure don't. Like we need to be up and moving. And so I'm always assessing people lying down, seated, and standing as well. So in standing, you want to be able to do 10 quick clicks, so contract, relax, then 6 to 8 repetitions of holding a maximal contraction, or I'm sorry, I think it's 8 to 12 repetitions of holding it for 6 to 8 seconds.
Okay.
A maximal contraction. And then you want to be able to hold a submaximal contraction, like a 30 to 50% effort for 60 seconds. So those were the objective measures that they gave us as far as pelvic floor being strong enough. Now, you don't have to hit that in week 0 to 2, but that's just what we're working toward. So back to week 0 to 2, we want to be able to do some pelvic floor muscle exercises, some basic core exercises. We aren't going to be doing any leg raises at that point, nothing that's increasing intra-abdominal pressure a ton, but little pelvic tilts, like side lying abduction, some clams are always great. And then if you feel good, you can get out and do some walking as well. In weeks 2 to 4, we're going to be progressing those pelvic floor exercises. And then if you're feeling good, you can also start adding some things like squats, lunges. Bridges are a fantastic exercise for our core and pelvic floor, especially if you're doing them correctly. So when you're doing a bridge, before you even lift up into that bridge, you're going to want to make sure that you're lying on the ground and use your abdominals to tilt your pelvis. So you're like pointing your pubic bone up towards the sky, right? And anchoring that back to the ground. So many people are not doing that. So we're leaving our spine in a vulnerable position, but also it's easy to kind of, I explain it, it's like we're cheating the exercise. Like I give out exercises that target the pelvic floor and the deep core. And some people come back and be like, that was really easy. Yeah, I just did them every day. And I'm like, easy. They're easy. You're not doing it right. Like it's very mindful, very tough work if you're really engaging those deep muscles. But I know that can be hard. And sometimes we're going, am I doing it? Am I doing it right? And that's where a pelvic floor therapist can help you know if you are doing it right. But yeah, you're going to want to anchor your back to the ground and then lift. And I always recommend at the top of the bridge, doing a nice glute squeeze and a pelvic floor contraction, hold for like 1 to 2 seconds, and then slowly lower back down and do it all again. So again, this isn't like busting through your reps. This is very mindful, deep muscle work. Yeah. And then in weeks 4 to 6, you can introduce some low impact exercise, maybe like static cycling or like an elliptical, something like that. And obviously for that too, the mother would have to be comfortable sitting in a saddle, like sitting on the bike seat, if that's what you're using. Maybe if you're not, maybe more of like a recumbent bike could be helpful, or like I said, that elliptical. There's just tons of different ideas. Like if one thing doesn't work for you, don't feel like hope is lost. You can modify in so many ways. And then in that week 6 to 8 range, if you had a C-section or if you tore or had an episiotomy during the birth, you're going to want to make sure that you're incorporating scar mobilization. So that is something that's really, we don't get enough information on that either. So with a C-section specifically, that they cut through 6 or 7 layers of tissue there. And as scars are healing, it can be like cement drying, and things can get really stuck and bound down. So we want to make sure at that 6 to 8 week mark that you're introducing scar mobilization. And I always tell people you can do just like little circles along the scar, push up and down, side to side, just get movement in all of those planes. And I also like using little silicone cups. You can get them on Amazon and like suction them around your scar using like lotion and kind of get that moving. I like those because all of our other massage techniques are kind of like pushing or digging, but these help lift up in a way and create space. So that's another great tool that you can use for that scar massage. But again, we just want to make sure that that's moving, because if things get really stuck and bound down, people can tend to have pain later on when they're trying to do their full range of motion or doing their running. At that point, you can introduce, so in this week 6 to 8, you can also introduce power walking, which I put on here. We call it power hiking. Thank you very much for
Power hiking, yes.
And you can start kind of increasing the duration and the intensity of your low impact exercise. Then you can start adding in some more weight lifting too, just lifting light weights, nothing over the weight of the baby in their car seat. So that can be kind of something that you're using as like, is this too heavy to be lifting? Which the car seats are usually around 11 pounds on their own. So then you add the baby in, you can be up to 20 pounds there. So just kind of an idea. But yeah, you can start doing some deadlifts, any kind of range of motion strengthening exercises that are going to help you in tasks that you're doing throughout your daily life. And if you have older siblings as well that you're caring for, as well as the baby, then you know that you're going to be doing a lot of getting up and down off the ground, things like that. So you want to be moving through those full ranges of motion. And then weeks 8 to 12, you can introduce swimming and do some more like biking if that's something that's comfortable for you. And then when we get to week 12, we've hit that 3-month mark. And so we would want to assess at that point, can I do those strength exercises? Can I do 20 repetitions on each side? Can I make it through without any negative symptoms, doing the load impact assessment? So that's the jumping and the walking for 30 minutes. And can I do those pelvic floor exercises that I mentioned before, the quick clicks as well as the endurance? If you can check mark those 3 things, then we're looking at like a graded return to running. So for example, that couch to 5K. So first time out is going to be, maybe you go for 30 minutes and you're walking for 1 minute, running for 1 minute, walking for like 3 minutes. And then slowly you can progress that as you feel comfortable. Maybe the next time you're running for 2, walking for 2, and getting back to being able to run more consistently.
Very cool. And it's so beneficial. And as we'd mentioned before, like all of this will be in the show notes so someone can go back and, relook at everything. And it's truly, this article is amazing. And it has so many beneficial things. And I think like the biggest thing, and as you'd mentioned before, is like once you accomplish all of this within the first 3 months, like it's not like you're ready to run sprints. You're ready to actually attempt running and tackle things, and go nice and slow, make sure everything, because if you go way too fast or way too hard in the beginning, just like anyone going to a runner or getting back into running after an injury, you never go full force. And this is, like you'd mentioned, way different than an injury. You are doing so much to your body. You just put your body through so much, not only through actually the pregnancy, having the baby, and now being a stay-at-home, not stay-at-home mom, but being at home with the baby and trying to adjust to normal life. And it's super stressful, and not in a bad way. It's just life, and you're trying to adjust things.
Not in a bad way. Just like there are new stressors introduced, like you said. And it's really hard. You and I have bonded over the fact that we like to be busybodies and we like to be moving. And I mentioned that like after I have babies, I have a hard time with this. Like telling me, you can't run for 3 months, like that sounds like torture. But I've been able to find other ways, or, within this exercise progression, that I'm still moving my body and feeling good mentally. Because I think a lot of us understand, like, of course, the physical benefits are great, but running
Mhm.
is for our mental health just as
Oh
much, if
yeah.
not more. Um, but I like to remind myself to help me like calm down, because I think sometimes I can be mean to myself too and be like, man, you're such a loser. Like, you haven't gone for a run for how long or whatever, you know? Um, but I like to remind myself it took 9 months to grow this baby. And
Yes.
it can take 9 months to a year to regain the strength and the not just strength of your muscles, but strength of all the tissues, the ligaments, the tendons, like everything involved in growing and birthing a baby. It can take 9 months to a year to get back to normal. If you're breastfeeding as well, then there's some hormonal things that we need to be aware of as well. There's going to be increased estrogen, and there could still be increased relaxin. So, relaxin is a hormone that gets released in the third trimester, and a lot gets released when you are in labor and giving birth, that helps to increase joint laxity, right? So, that is helping to allow the baby to get through the birth canal. For that sacrum to open, like the sacrum has to swing back a little bit for baby to be born. So we need that relaxin to get those ligaments to relax. But let's think about that as runners. Increased joint laxity, we need to be careful, right? And we need to be paying attention to how our body is feeling. And if you're feeling kind of unstable, know that it's not just because you're like a bag of bones now, it's also because there's hormones that are affecting that. So just be patient with yourself, be kind to yourself, and have grace for yourself when you're going through that postpartum period. Easier said than done, but try.
Yeah. Yes, yes. And like you said, it's not easy, and everybody is so different. Like I honestly, and social media is so overrated in that aspect of these, no offense to these women out there, but they're like, I got back to running, X amount of days or weeks after,
Yeah.
and very cool for them, super amazing. But at the same time, like everybody's so different. Some people it does take longer, some people it does take quicker. And who's
Totally.
to say that person that got back quicker is doing it the smart way or the correct way?
Right. And
So
maybe they just don't know
always,
that they
always be
babysitted
careful.
see yet. Yeah.
Y Yeah, exactly, and like you said, this topic is very untalked about, it's not so much even known, and I can guarantee you I have experienced from my sister and other people as well, like, their doctor's just like, "Well, when you feel better, you can go back to running, or you can go back to your daily activities," like, not in a rude way, they have no clue either, so it's just
Exactly.
a topic that definitely needs to get shared about.
Exactly. And that's why I'm so excited when I found this article or when it was shared with me. Because I was like, oh my gosh, someone is giving us some objective measures, some real things that we can do. And this article is from 2019. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, this article is from 2019. And before we got on to do this, I was like, I'm going to double check and make sure, because in the beginning, it says like every year we're going to re-update this and kind of go over it. So I was searching, trying to find like, is there something more recent even that I can be referencing? I couldn't find anything. And so just the
That
lack
is
of evidence, it's there, like, but I'm just going to be grateful for what we do have, at least.
Yeah. Yes. We have something and it's a good start. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's tough. I'm sure in the sense of I know I've done scientific research and papers and stuff and it's never easy. So stinks that there's no more out there, but this article was amazing and coming back and like, getting into it and whatnot was awesome. And it was such a eye lifter for me as a coach because like I've literally talked to females that are like, well, I'm pregnant. I will come back, a couple weeks after. And I'm like,
Yeah.
just, let me know and we can kind of discuss from there. But, this is just great information for any female that is out there, either thinking about having a baby, is literally pregnant with a baby, or is just had a baby and is looking to get back into running. So it's definitely
Yeah.
some good, useful information. And, it is just something, like you said, it's not talked about and we need to try to talk about it way more.
Yep. And you did a good job bringing this up at the beginning. You were like, okay, obviously I've never had a baby, but like I've experienced some of these things. And so I like to bring that to light too, because I think a lot of people talk about pelvic floor therapy specifically around pregnancy and postpartum, which is great. It
Mm,
does need to be addressed. But if you're a woman who's never had kids, you're not planning on having kids, and you are like, oh, I feel some of those things too. Again, you're not alone in that. Like, so just know that it's for you too. Like, I think all women should
yeah.
have access to pelvic floor therapy and pelvic floor assessments, especially if you're very active. Just
Oh
figuring
yeah.
out how your body is taking that load. And then the other thing that I see, I try to teach people how to do pelvic floor exercises. And a lot of them, sometimes I'm like, okay, go ahead and contract your pelvic floor. Go ahead and contract. Like they're trying, but nothing's happening. But I'm like, okay. So sometimes we just aren't connected. That mind body connection isn't there. So maybe you're trying to do a Kegel and you can't for whatever reason. And then I also see some people who think they're contracting when in fact they're pushing or bearing down. And so obviously that's going to have some negative effects on the pelvic floor too. So again, that's another reason it's great to have a professional assess. And then they can tell you like, oh yeah, you're doing great. Here's your home program. Go ahead. Or wait, we need to work in the clinic on this a little bit more and help you learn. The coordination piece is huge.
Yeah, no, and I didn't even think about that. And that's so true. And, this isn't only for women as well. Like we had mentioned before, this is also something that men also deal with. So anyone out there that is experienced this or is like, maybe I'm kind of interested, like don't hesitate to reach out. And I know you'd mentioned like you're pretty full and whatnot, but from your point of view, what is the best way for someone to try to find someone to help them in this type of, industry type deal?
Yes, absolutely. That's a great question. So where I live in a small little town called Snowflake, Arizona. And I'm the only person within 3 hours that does pelvic floor therapy here. So like,
Wow.
I know that especially if you're in a rural area, it can be hard to find somebody. But a quick Google search, hopefully you could find something. And specifically, so where I did my training through, it's called Herman and Wallace, and we can link this. But I know on their website they have a like a search bar where you can type in like where you live or the zip code, and they have therapists who are registered pelvic floor therapists on that list, and it'll help you link up like where is the closest pelvic floor therapist to you. So if you live in a big city, you probably have quite a few options, but if you're more rural, you might be traveling a little bit. But again, as information gets out, hopefully more people will start doing this as well, like going into this as a profession, and you'll find more. But I think, looking online, but specifically you can use Herman and Wallace to find a therapist close to you.
For sure. And I will we'll get the link and we'll have it in the show notes. That way, if anyone is truly interested, they can go and search. And hopefully, like you mentioned, if nothing's super local, it's not at least too far of a drive for you to go find it. And at the end of the day, I think after listening to this, all of us would know it's very beneficial. It's something that we should, truly take seriously and start to pay attention to, especially as we get older and, just the complications and things kind of pop up in life. So I truly appreciate all of this information. It's so useful. Again, the article will be in the show notes. We'll have the link if people are interested in finding people. But before I let you go, I have a question that I always like to ask everyone on the podcast. So the podcast is called The Tribe of Runners. I love the aspect of everyone involved. We have met and became really, really close. I, truly appreciate everything. I've met your brother via podcast, so it's kind of different, but I love the community, and, I love bringing everyone together and just encouraging, inspiring everyone. Like, I can't wait for you to share your journey to the 100 miler, because I know it's going to be epic, because I have literally helped you get this far, and I can't wait to get you to the full 100. So with that being said, when you think of the word tribe, what does that mean to you within the running world?
That's a great question. Two things actually come to mind a little bit for me. So, first of all, I think when I entered the trail running community and kind of started dipping my toe in there, I think that's what really hooked me, is that it really does feel like a tribe. I love the name of your podcast because you get to the start line of a trail race and people are chatting, everyone's got their snacks packed in their thing. And like, even along the race, you're getting to know people. Love road running, love road runners. But I just did that road race, that road marathon. And there were multiple times where I was running and I was like kind of next to a person. And I was like, man, I wonder what their story is. Like, I wonder how long they've been running and what's going on. But, they've got the headphones in. I don't want to break their groove. Maybe they're going for a PR. I was going for a PR, but I kind of felt lonely sometimes in like a huge group of people. There were almost 4,000 people that ran this marathon, but I have never felt like that on the trail. I feel like if you are a part of the trail running community, whether you're the pro or like your mid pack or back of the pack, like there's just this kind of like kindness and this understanding that like we're all out here just trying to be our best. And so I love that. And I love having a running buddy with Carter right now. Like it just has worked out great that we're both in places in our life where we're able to be training, and that we are just both kind of obsessed with the trail running right now. Like we're constantly texting, "Did you see this?" Whatever. Like it's just like totally our thing. And Carter is 9 years younger than me, so you wouldn't think maybe that we're like super close, but through the running right now, we've been able to become super close. So that's been fun too, to have a tribe like my running buddy. And then I feel like really lucky that I have a supportive tribe. Like I know that my parents are going to drive all through the night to crew for us. And my husband's been super supportive with all the training that I'm doing. So when I think of tribe, I also think of all the people in the background per se, like that are making this happen. Like I'm the one moving my legs, doing the running, but it doesn't happen without a whole tribe of people that has your back.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I love both aspects because it's everything about the tribe of runners that's included, because not only is it the people out there that you meet on the trail and the amazing stories that you have and get to experience out there, but it's also the behind the scenes, like your husband being supportive when you wake up early and go for the runs, and your parents coming out there and crewing you, and just, having those people there, even though, like you said, it's literally your two legs doing this, but at the end of the day, it's not without the help of everyone else around, which is amazing. And I love it. I love everything about it. That's why I'm doing this, and that's why I keep sharing all the stories I possibly can. So truly, thank you so much for being on the podcast and sharing this topic on, returning to running postpartum, and sharing a little bit about all the good stuff down there, and helping educate more women and men on the pelvic area. So I truly appreciate it. And again, I cannot wait to have you on post 100. So I don't mean to put the pressure on you, but all the pressure is
Oh, I
on to
love
have
it.
an
I
epic
love it.
story post 100.
Well, thank you so
Very
much for
cool. Well,
having
thank
me
you
on.
again so much for being on.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. I'm glad to be able to share it. I hope I explained it in a way that people can understand. And if they have more questions, feel free to reach out. We can put my information out there too. So I loved it. I love to chat about this and help people understand. So thank you for giving me a platform
For
to
sure.
share
Yes,
it.
I will have. Yes, for sure. I will have your social and all of that in the show notes, and then the article. And yeah, if they have any questions, I will definitely shoot them your way.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.